Hello all, and welcome to the midweek brief. My name is Anthony, and on behalf of FP Markets, thank you for watching this. The idea is to provide you straight to the point, general news, what's going on in the world, regardless of the bias or misinformation, as much as possible. Whilst you're here, please like and subscribe. It means a lot to us, so we can do more of these videos to help you. And most importantly, it's all free. Fantastic. So first things first, for all of our traders, for all of our clients, as I mention every week, take advantage of our Traders Hub. It's in your client portal. It's also via the website. It's all free. It's full of articles, videos, educational material, analysis, everything you need in one place. There's people out there that pay a lot of money to get people to do this for them. We have experts here who do this for you too. So moving on, the most important discussion this week in terms of news is obviously the Israel Palestine situation around Gaza. We've seen several developments happening there. Firstly, we've seen literally over the past few days a movement from IDF forces going into Rafah. This was expected for weeks now. They said it was likely to happen after Passover. Of course, there's been talks of ceasefires. Um, but in terms of the ceasefire, it's actually been discussed via Egypt and Qatar as backers. Now, this is what causes the confusion. When you come up with a ceasefire deal, you need to have both parties at the table ticking off boxes, seeing what they can achieve. If you have only got Egypt and Qatar there backing Hamas to come up with a ceasefire deal, of course they're going to agree to it because it's their version of the ceasefire deal, whereas Israel's is very different. That being said, I think Hamas knew that Israel would reject this on the table, making them look like the bad guys. And to a point, yes, because Netanyahu did also come out the other day and said, regardless of the ceasefire, they will still move into Rafah to hunt down any more terrorists, as he put it. So this is what we've seen. We've seen a significant operation in this area, but also Israel has taken this corridor by the refugee camp in order to allow aid in, so they've claimed. But then it gets more confusing because or complicated because we've also seen videos authenticated as well of Hamas fighters shooting upon Palestinian civilians whilst they're trying to collect aid. So we're seeing a lot of this from both sides. It seems there's no right or wrong. Well, there's always wrong, but there's definitely both sides at play in this, and it seems that the civilians are the ones suffering the most. If we go to the north of Israel, we can see a big um, amount of action in terms of Hezbollah fighting with Israel. This is totally different. This is definitely more of two forces meeting, two militaries meeting, as opposed to hunting down terrorists in tunnels. So the Hezbollah are a formidable force. They've got a lot of weaponry, not necessarily an air force or navy per se, but they have a large land force. Experts in guerrilla warfare with the mountains in Lebanon. So this is something that Israel are probably trying to keep minimized as much as possible, um, especially as they're facing a lot of international pressure. Relating to international pressure, we can also see that the United States have said that they are not going to fund or provide aid in the form of weapons anymore, but they will still carry out their obligations to sell to Israel weapons. So nothing's really changed. They're still going to make their money, and Israel is still going to get their weapons. However, that's the way it is now. As I said, Hamas says it's a ceasefire proposal. There was cheering in the streets when this was done, but also, like I said, this was their version of a ceasefire deal. And by putting on the table, hoping that Israel refuse it, it's called a ruse. That's what Israel are saying it is. It was likely to be refused. It doesn't seem that this is going anywhere soon. If we like I said, Israel seizes control of Rafah border crossing and hits out a Hamas ceasefire ruse, exactly what I've just mentioned. So basically, we've got a political situation where both sides are blaming each other. People are saying that Netanyahu is receiving a lot of pressure. Of course, he is internally and from his own people. Mind you, all world leaders tend to get that too. We've seen it in the States and out of the UK. So a lot of propaganda is at play here. If we go over to the pro-Palestinian situation, The reason I'm bringing this up is because we've seen over the news Columbia University out of New York, UCLA out of Los Angeles. We've seen other universities in America, Canada, and Toronto. We've seen in Cambridge and Oxford now. We're seeing in some European cities pro-Palestinian protesters taking over campus grounds. And most of it is relatively peaceful. There's a few scuffles. It's nothing controversial like that. The controversy behind this is not their right to speak. Of course, they have a right to protest, especially if they're in countries like the UK or America who have a hand to play in the whole situation anyway. The issue at play here is who's funding them? Well, the FBI have got involved, Interpol have got involved, and they've actually sourced it. And a lot of it is coming from Politico. And who are Politico? Well, it's probably one of those names that you've heard of but never really knew much about. They're a news organization simply based out of the Washington, D.C. They're also main campaigners for the Democratic Party, and a lot of funding of it them goes directly to Joe Biden's campaign. So I'll repeat that. That's Joe Biden's campaign. So imagine the tables were turned here and this was found out to be about Trump. It would be all over the news. This is linked to Joe Biden, it seems. Not necessarily him directly. We're not saying that the investigation is not saying that he personally is funding these protests, but this organization is traced back. It's not a myth or a conspiracy. It's been proven. News is not covering it mostly, though. This isn't going to change the US dollar or gold overnight, but it's interesting to know what's at play, and this just adds to the knowledge. So in the future, there may be a tradable situation that occurs. So that seems to be who is behind it. And we can explain more over the coming weeks as this investigation unfolds. But it does make sense. And the red flag was when protesters were turning up to campus grounds, they were finding that all the tents were the same, all their bags were the same. They had plywood, they had spray cans, they had everything all brand new, flags, you name it, everything was just funded and waiting for them. This is a very dangerous thing because if protests, regardless of this political situation, it could be Ukraine, it could be China, it could be due to some virus. If we're seeing that this manipulation and interference is going on and creating protests, then that's a national security concern. This is why the FBI are involved. If we actually go over and to finish on the Israel situation, Israel have banned Al Jazeera from the country. This is not good for a democratic country to do, and Israel claims to be a democratic powerhouse in that region. It's the only democratic in that region, really, a democratic country. But I also understand why they've done it too. I mean, you don't need to be an analyst to sit there and understand why they did it, because Al Jazeera are a Qatari-based company. They're headquartered, founded, and run out of Qatar mostly. Qatar is also home and temporarily housing Hamas leader. So Israel don't really want to have an organization, regardless if it's a news network or a charity or something, that has direct links possibly to Hamas or the Qataris. Qatar and Israel don't have great relations. They used to have a trade deal that went on during the late 80s and 90s, but it ended around the year 1996. So it was short-lived, and they don't have much of a trade deal with them now. So this is just another reason for Israel to stir up and create a bit of upheaval as well. If we also go and touch on just a quick Russia update, the only significant development is that Putin has been officially inaugurated in. He had his parade yesterday, as you can see here. But there was a thwarted assassination attempt on Zelensky where he was to be kidnapped and murdered, and they've managed to uncover that as well. So that's just a quick update on the region. In terms of macros for the week, the big ones today are going to be oil inventories out later today, but definitely tomorrow we are going to see a bit more focus on the British pound. We've got interest rate decision coming out. Again, it's 5.25%. All of them tend to be the same. Australia's came out this week as well, and it was the same. Canada came out a few weeks ago. It was the same as United States. It seems that all the countries are trying to keep it the same, and they're staring at each other to see which one's going to rip off the bandage first. People are expecting it to be United States or Bank of England, or Bank of England. We'll find out tomorrow if it's true. The thing is, when it's too high interest rate, we know it's not a good thing. When it's too low, we know it's not a good thing. And I'll go more behind the history of it in perhaps future briefs. But at the moment, they're just stagnant, staying the same. They want more evidence of inflation. We've had this topic of conversation before, but it could change at any moment at the same time. So the reason we pay attention to it is in hope that it does get cut and reduce and create a bit of activity in the market, but that could happen at any moment. That's not going to happen necessarily tomorrow, but it could be next week or the month after. But we want to be there when it happens as traders and take advantage of any movement it offers. So Bank of England interest rate decision tomorrow. And then to finish the week off, we've also got jobless claims out of the United States. Nice follow on from the NFP a week ago. Most focus will also be on British pound again on Friday as we've got GDP coming out. It would be nice if GDP perhaps came out um, before the interest rate decision, because it might be a factor that would influence it. You know, if the country's not doing so well manufacturing or its GDP in general as a service provider, it could influence any interest rate decision, but it's not happening that way. In terms of stocks, there's only one I'm going to talk about this week. I could sit here and talk about a lot of obscure companies. The thing is, that's always risky, and we don't encourage risk. Sometimes when it comes to stocks, just trade what you know. But the reason I'm choosing a familiar company that we've talked about before is Boeing. Reason being is their lowest price that they've ever been is $95. Okay, so we're way off of that now, but we've got factors at play here which could, in the long term, theoretically push it down. And why? Well, multitude of things. Firstly, we tend to see that traders are not necessarily trading earnings as much, especially in the CFD market. Why? Because earnings are preemptive. You can see them coming. You can see which company is going to do well. So it's not like the earnings are going to come out overnight and everyone goes crazy like the old days when people would check for their weekly news update via a newspaper or the Financial Times. But in this case, we live in a very connected world. So people see this come months on end. People are more likely to react to controversial news, Twitter posts, things like that from Elon Musk, for example, and this is how the trading's evolved. So in the case of Boeing, three factors at play here. Boeing faces new US investigation into missed 787 inspections. This goes back to their issue a few years ago where they were producing planes that were not receiving a final check before being sold on to the relevant airlines. This is an ongoing situation, but also for the fact that they've tried to get involved in the space industry with their Boeing Starliner, and it was delayed launch because of a technical issue. And then to top off the week, which was great for Boeing, was second whistleblower linked to Boeing dies after brief illness. He was 45 years old. Rest in peace. So it seems very old, probably not far off my age, and apparently got an infection overnight and died. Another whistleblower. I'm trying not to say this sarcastically. I am, obviously, but I wish this gentleman to rest in peace, of course. But it can't be coincidental. We've got all these issues going on, whistleblowers, and then they suddenly start disappearing or are found dead. The previous one was found in a car park, apparently he killed himself, and this gentleman was found dead at home from a brief illness, it seems. And we may be wrong. He might genuinely be totally innocent. But this is not what traders feel. And these three factors, as they grow over the coming days and weeks, could potentially push Boeing shares down to a much lower level. And this is why we try to get to the truth of the news. You know, over the past week, we've seen propaganda left, right, and center. We're seeing misleading titles. The moment Hamas, for example, said they accepted a ceasefire, it was all over the news. Hamas accepts ceasefire. That wasn't the case. Hamas have proposed a ceasefire deal. The news totally misled it, misconstrued it. And this is reflective in gold. If you go and have a look at gold, you'll be able to see that it's ranging, it's going sideways as people stand off waiting for more confirmed news. Apart from that, I hope you'll have a brilliant rest of the week. It's a lot quieter than other weeks in terms of economic events, but that's great. It doesn't mean you don't trade. It means you can sit back and practice, use your demo account, study more about the market, study the history, reach out to your client relations specialist here, your point of contact, arrange some meetings, have a call, learn something new, and always understand we're not here to tell you what to do. We just like to put the information on the table so you can go ahead and make an informed decision with your trade, and hopefully it helps. As I said, my name's Anthony. Thank you very much for your time. Please like and subscribe, and I shall speak to you all again next week. Thank you.